Let us give a 5 minutes review as to why are we studying consciousness? Why did the Buddha always concentrate on knowing one's consciousness? Why? There's a saying, and not just in the Buddhist teaching, in many philosophical teachings, there's a saying that whatever you sow something on the ground. Say you have a farm, you sow something, whatever you sow, you reap. So the causality is, there's a cause, the cause will lead to an effect. The cause will lead to an effect. Whatever you sow, you reap. And then we say, who am I? How do I come into this world? Why am I born in here? And why is it that I can think? And also my thinking is a little different from other species of animals. And what's going on in me? Why do I come about in this world? I know we sow what we reap. It's a logical understanding. You sow what you reap. Like you study hard, you pass the exam, given all these conditions. You don't care about your health, you run into health problems. Whatever cause you sow, you reap whatever effects that will come out. So one has to be extremely careful with what one's sowed, right? And usually, the more intelligent people, wise people, would be quite mindful of the reaping part. What's the consequence, they say. If I do this, what's the consequence? They always think about the consequence. Those are the more careful, prudent, more or less more intelligent people. They always look at, if I do this, what kind of consequence that will come out? They consider the effect. For some other people, they don't really care. I just do what I want. As long as it pleases my pleasurable senses, I can do what I want. Those are the people that always get into problems. Consciousness comes into thoughts or words. Consciousness, what means conceptual, concepts, words, whatever images form in your mind. And then we say, where does this consciousness come from? It's easy to say, because some philosophers say words would breed actions, would breed thought, then thoughts will lead to what? All these cause and effect. But let's back up a bit to say, what gives rise to thoughts? Consciousness. And where does this consciousness comes from? We say we have past life and present life consciousness. Past life, from previous life, we have accumulated a lot of karmic energy, karma. And in the present life, we have expressed and accumulated karma. What is the expressed? The very obvious expressed karma that we have in this present life. What is the very express, very superficial? You can see it right away. What's that karma? Your own body, your own existence. Your present life existence is your body, your 5 skenters, the 5 aggregates. We are body and mind. Your body and mind. The body being the whole body, physically, and your mind mentally, that's you. So your expressed karma in this life is also due to previous life accumulation of karma that help you or that contribute to the expression of this life. So you are not just of this life, you are a previous accumulated karma carried forward. And all these is a conglomeration of consciousness. And we call that, in what we are studying, we call it the 8 consciousness. And then consciousness would give rise to thoughts. We say thoughts, because of thoughts that give rise to actions and speech. Every action, every speech it's because of your thought. Your thought would carry out, would drive, would push into volitional action and volitional speech. That comes from the thought. I guess there's no denying on this part. Everybody would recognize that. A thought would give rise to action or speech. And then, of course, we say, I said a 5 minutes review, so that's what we're doing. We've already gone through 10 minutes already. Actions would give rise to habits, right? You repeat this action, you repeat this speech all the time. It becomes your habits. You're always yelling, it becomes your habit. You're always lazy, it becomes your habit. You're always, considerate, that becomes your habit. You're always compassionate, that becomes your habit. You always have anger, you build up a habit of depressed attitude, you build a habit of fear, of jealousy, of hatred, of anger, of selfishness. If you repeat that all the time, it's dangerous because that becomes your habits. So you have to watch your own speech. You have to watch your own behavior. And what is more important, what? You have to watch what? Your thought. That's the reason why the Buddha said, watch your thought. Not just to express action or you express speech, because they all come from the thought. Why are we meditating? When we're meditating, what do? We become mindful on every thought that comes up to us. We haven't been mindful. When you're not mindful, what do? You just act on whatever thought comes up. I want to curse. I want to yell. I want to fight. I like this. I dislike this. I hate this. I love this. Whatever comes up, you just express them because it comes from your thought. And we're not careful with it. We're not careful with the fact that if actions and speech are repeated all the time, dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. It becomes a habit. If you talk to a high school kid, a teenager, hey, Sonny, you got to watch your habits. And then Sonny said, how do I watch my habits? I don't know. Tell me how. No, just your habit. That's not sufficient. Sonny, let me train you. You have to know every thought that comes up to you, that comes up in you. You watch every thought. You must be mindful. When you're greedy, you must be mindful. When you are good, you must be mindful. When you are not good, you must be mindful. You have to be the master of your own thought. Can you, Sonny, can you do that? He does not know, but you have to train him. What are you thinking now, Sonny? I'm thinking I'm having lunch. Yeah, it's good you're having lunch, but this is the thought. Then you're going to have lunch, and what comes up before having lunch? The thought of wanting a lunch. The other day I was thinking of a habit that different people would have different habits. And I'm thinking of eating grapes. Grapes? And I don't like to have one cluster and then just pick on it. I like to split it apart, put some sea salt in it and make sure that it's clean and all that. So they come in separate pieces. And I use a bowl to contain all these different grapes. Some are bitter, some are sweet, some are delicious, and some are not. They're not every grape is the same. So I'm thinking, basically, there are three kinds of people when they're eating grapes. One is, I don't care how I do it, I just pick it up. I don't know what I'm picking up. It's a bowl of grapes, I just pick up, I don't care. Just pick up, I'm eating grapes, right? That's one kind of people. Another kind of people, what do? I like to eat the bitter one first. And then I slowly get into the sweet one, delicious ones. I start with the bitter ones. I start with the small, ugly-looking ones. Small ones, green ones, ugly-looking ones. And I like to work from the ugly-looking, non-delicious, not sweet. I like to work from the bad ones to the good ones. Until later I come to the sweet ones. Oh, I get sweet grapes. There's another kind of people, right? What kind of habit you have? Different people have different habits. And there's a third kind of people. What do? I like to start with the sweet one first. Why do I have to subject myself to bad ones? I like to taste the sweetness of the grapes first. Why do I have to go through, bad things first? That's another kind of people. They like to go from sweet to bitter, and some like to go from bitter to sweet, and some don't really care. So they have different habits. It does not matter what habits you have. When you are starting with the bitter ones, then you say, I'm going to have good ones. I'm going to have good ones. But what do you wind up with? They're all the same. Because you can't really taste it, but you just judge by your experiences as to what is good and what is bad. So you're not a winner. So you always think that this is my habit of building it up. But for people who work from the bitter to the sweet, they always have to strive to improve. They want to improve. For people who work from the sweet to bitter, I like to be materialistic now. I like to have fame, reputation. I want what I want now. What do I care about the future? I don't live in the future. So they're just working towards getting the best for them. By hook or by crook, by every ways, by all means. So they're different people, building up different habits. And some of our habits are not beneficial to others, let alone beneficial to your own personally, to you personally. So it depends on all the habits that you have, and it does not matter what habits you have. Finally, you come to the end, and the Buddha said, whether you start from the bitter to the sweetness, or to the bitterness, to the sweetness to bitterness, you come of eating it all. Why don't you find out more about why? Why do we come to this world? Why do we have this habit? How do we watch our habits? How do we improve it? So actions would give rise to habits. And also, another thing that comes up in my mind now, sometimes we have misunderstanding of habits, misunderstanding of what we are doing. Let me give you an example. If a person loses some keys, a chain of keys, and he was walking on the streets at nighttime, and he couldn't find his key for his car. He's walking to the parking lot, and he couldn't find his key, and he knew that he dropped somewhere in the dark. I mean, he dropped somewhere, he didn't know where. Probably he knew that when he was walking out from the parking lot, which is on the dark side, he dropped some key. And then he was searching. And there's another guy coming up and say, hey, what are you searching? I'm searching for my lost key. And, I helped you. So that the two guys are searching for the key. And when they're searching, one guy said, where do you lost your key? I remember I lost my key in a parking lot when I just came out, and then I just lost it in the dark. And then that guy said, we're looking for it. Where are we looking for? We're looking for under the light, under the brightness. Of course we're looking for something under the brightness. How can you look for something in the dark? So they habitually are looking for things under the light that they can see. But they're not looking for things in the darkness, which he lost his key in the darkness. Here's a misunderstanding that he always wants, when you're looking for something, how can you looking for something in the dark? You're not looking for something in the dark. You're habitually looking for something that is easy, that is on the surface, that is not hidden, that's not laden. He was not successful looking for something in what he thinks, a location illuminated with light. And finally they say, hey, we're stupid. Maybe you drop your key in the dark. We should look in the dark. How can we see in the dark? Well, that's exactly why you lost your key. Let's go back to get a torchlight and try to search. It's right beside his car in the dark. So we're habitually thinking in the wrong pattern, and we don't know about that. And even if somebody told you, don't look for things in the brightness of the day, go to the dark side where you lost it. No. How can I see in the dark? That's exactly where you have the misunderstanding. Personality gives rise to destiny. And this is the reason why we have to study our consciousness, because that destiny is because of our consciousness. It's not because of your personality. It's not because of your values. You build up that value yourself. It's not totally because of the habits, because the actions and speech repeated all the time becomes your habits. Don't blame your action. Don't blame your speech. Blame the thought. And then the thought say, don't blame me, blame the consciousness. So we have to know our consciousness. The average person has a very blurry understanding of consciousness. They only act impulsively. They only are looking for pleasures. They're not getting deep into consciousness. That's exactly what we're doing now. We have to understand how we think, how our mentality functions. When we run into a problem, we just react with what? With emotions. And emotions is exactly in where? In your thoughts. You have to go back to consciousness. And what is this consciousness mix up of? That's what we've been studying. We've studied the first 5 consciousness. Now we're getting into the 6th. Okay, the 6th consciousness, we call it the Mano Vijnana. The 6th consciousness is extremely active and subtle. That is the manager. That is the consciousness that is responsible for reincarnation, for doing bad, for doing misdeeds, for creating a lot of animosity, hatred, greediness, depression, you name them. The 6th consciousness created all these because they are possessing all the 51 concomitant mental functions. Remember we said there are 51 concomitant mental functions with consciousness? The first 5 possess how many? How many concomitant mental functions? Only 34. The first 5, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the ears, they only possess 34 crude, superficial mental functions. And this Mano consciousness, the 6th consciousness, possess all the 51. How about the 7th consciousness? Let me tell you right now. 18 concomitant mental functions. How about alaya consciousness? 8 concomitant mental functions. So this 6th consciousness contains the most mental functions. They're extremely active and subtle. Remember what these mental functions are? Let's get to them. Omnipresent functions, 5. Particular functions, 5. Unwholesome functions, 26. Wholesome, 11. 4 indeterminate functions add up to 51. The 6th consciousness possess all of these mental functions working. What are omnipresent, simultaneous mental functions? There's attention, contact, sensation, perception, and volition. That all happen in the 6th consciousness. I already explained them. Particular mental functions, it applies to certain situations. And we can give an example in the daily life. There's an ad hoc committee, an ad hoc for specific purpose, particular functions. For example, you have a resolution that in 2018 you want to learn meditation. You really want to learn it. And you want to learn it so much that you desire to learn meditation so that you can be benefited by it. So you have the desire. You have the resolution that you must learn it. And in the learning process, you become very mindful, and you have concentration, and you have intelligence. So that requires you to be specifically setting up an agenda, setting up a particular ad hoc purpose to learn it. So that is something that you created yourself. But omnipotent mental functions is not. It happened immediately. The attention happened immediately. Contact, sensation, perception, relation happen immediately. It's simultaneously, omnipresent, concomitantly. But particular functions, you have to build it up. If you, say for example, you run into a good friend, you run into a monk who knows meditation, and he makes you, he helps you, he explains it to you, and become interesting in it, then you set up the particular function. Not everybody set up the particular functions in learning something wise, in learning something intelligent. Unwholesome mental functions, the six consciousnesses have 26 of them. Wholesome ones, 11. So our six consciousness, the mono consciousness, contain more than double in our unwholesome functions. The root, greediness, hatred, and all that, 8. Primary, 8. Intermediate, 2. Minor ones, 10. Well, we already have explained it to them. You review your notes, you know. Wholesome functions, only 11. Indeterminate functions, 4. So that's the reason why we said the sixth consciousness is extremely subtle and extremely active. When we are doing meditation, we are actually training the six. We're not training our eyes, because see, in most of the meditation we close our eyes. We're not training our eyes, we're not training our ears, not our nose, our tongue. We're training our mano. You're training, when you're meditating, you are training your sixth consciousness to be under control, to be your own manager. Right now, you're not your own manager. You allow your sixth consciousness to roam in every direction. Roam into greediness sometimes, depressions, hatred, fear, anger, selfishness, egoistic attitude. You let them roam, wander all over the place. It is not under control. The Buddha said, learn how to put that under control. So the Yogacara approach is to help us to understand more about yourself. So next, capable of cognizing all dharmas and leading into wholesome, unwholesome, and neutral volitions. What is dharma? What are dharmas? Cognizing the sixth consciousness, rationalizing, intellectualizing, discriminating, cognizing, cognition. All dharmas include present and past, include yesterday's images, all the illusions, all the imaginations. When we're not interacting externally, when our eyes, our ears, our nose, our body, our tongue, they only interact with whatever is present, whatever is now, raw reality. Can your eyes react with yesterday's? No. Your eyes cannot react with yesterday's images. Only your mano can. Can your tongue still taste yesterday's food? No. You may remember yesterday's food. That's your mano, not your tongue. Don't think that your tongue can remember the taste of yesterday's whatever you're eating. Yesterday you smelled? No. So your mano, cognizing all past images, past dharmas, and at the same time, simultaneously, working with the first 5 to cognize the present. So how subtle, how active they are. Next, various functions of the cognitive process responsible for all volitional actions, speech, and thoughts that involve with creation of karma. So the monoconsciousness is at the same time creating a lot of karma through simultaneous interactions with your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue. When you are listening to some reprimanding voices, some voice that is scolding you or blaming you, insulting you, your ears got that, simultaneously passes through you to your mano, and your mano gets very angry. And then you start to fight, you start to yell, or you start to get depressed. You have a lot of anger in you. Or, even without your first 5 senses, your mano is sitting in here, and you are contemplating about your grief-stricken past, about your bad past experiences, and all of a sudden this sadness, this anxiety comes up in you, that develops into a depression. You feel depressed, you feel angry, you feel unfair, you feel jealous, whatever you feel. Your mano, your sixth manager, brought all those past experiences onto the table and let you ponder on them, let you cry on them, let you get grief-stricken on them. You know how foolish we are? We brought back whatever is past that would not come back anymore onto the present. Like when you're looking at your computer again, you get back from your files and you start to cry on those files. You start to get angry with those past files. And anxiety, we start to have a lot of anxiety. I remember there was a philosopher, Alan Watt, philosopher in the 1980s, 70s, and 60s, and he said something very useful the other day, and he said about anxiety. It does not what anxiety that comes up. No amount of anxiety can change the outcome. So why do you have to? Why do you have to get so much anxiety? You think your anxiety coming up will change the outcome? No amount of anxiety, fear, depression will change the outcome. It only affects your what? Affects your mental functions. It only affects you mentally. It would not change the outcome with it. You mean being fearful about it, building up anxiety and depression about it, then your health would be better? As a matter of fact, that would become worse even. So no amount of anxiety would change the outcome. So why are you still so anxious, build up so much anxiety? No amount of anger would change the outcome because it already happened. Why do you still angry about it? Yesterday this guy was yelling at you, and now you brought back, you created images in your mind and you brought back that anger on it and ponder on it. You become so sad, so angry. You think that would change? Would change yesterday? It wouldn't. So why are we so stupid? I'm not saying you stupid. Why are we so stupid? No amount of anxiety, depression would change anything. It would worsen. It would make it worse. But we keep on falling into the same track, you and me. We keep on being jealous, having depression, fear, anxiety, anger, arrogance, fraudulence, deceitfulness. I don't know. Why are we still having this? What is that word? Habitual thinking. That's our habitual thinking. We think that way for many, many lives. We brought that habits into our lives. And that habit is so grounded in our alive consciousness. We're blinded by it. When we get anger, we don't think about, oh, this professor said no amount of fear or anxiety would change the outcome. He forgot about it because it's become so fearful. You must use this frequency of repetition to dominate that bad habit. That's the reason why we say, what? Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. We want to repeat the mantra to dominate our bad habitual thinking, replaced it with another kind of frequency. Because what can you do? Because we're habitually sunk into that trap, and now you have a remedy. that monk has given you a remedy. He said, whenever you come up with this anxiety, with this fear, replace that thought by another thought, by a mantra. Because when you're sitting there feeling depressed, it won't change anything. But if you want to replace that with a mantra, that would change it. Why? Because the mantra has a meaning to it. What does Om Mani Padme Hum means? Om, listen very carefully. Dominate all your bad thoughts. Om, that's Om. Listen very carefully. That is the origin of all good deeds, the origin of all good thoughts. Om, that means attract your attention. Mani, I have that precious consciousness in me that is so pure. Why am I polluting it? So Om Mani, Mani is that precious jewel in me. Padme, and I want to purify it by what? Cleansing my senses. Now my sense sink into anxiety, sink into depression. I want to cleanse it. So cleansing it is like what? It's like a flower, a lotus flower, Padme, growing up from the mud, not be influenced and affected by the mud. Home, that accomplishes everything. So purifying yourself. So Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. That's purifying mantra is much better than repeating that what? Thought of anxiety, thought of fear. Because by repeating it, that won't change the outcome. But if you repeated this mantra, that changed the outcome. There's one thing. The mantra has a meaning. Another is, the mantra is a frequency connected to a saint. It's just like that mantra has a frequency connected to a doctor, a mental doctor. And that mental doctor is radiating in this channel all this good karmic energy. Is radiating from it. Just like your cell phone has a central station radiating out frequency so that you can contact to your friends through your cell phone. It's the same logic. Why are you not using the mantra? Why are you still habitually thinking about fear, energy, hatred, arrogance, fraudulence, deceitfulness, revenge, egoistic behavior? So, that's what the sixth consciousness, if we have a better understanding of it, we know the manager. If we know the manager, then we are interacting with a good manager. You got to train your manager, you know. You think you can run a good company by just leaving your manager alone and do what he wants? You got to come and train your manager. The Buddha taught you how to train it. But you don't care, you don't train it. You let your manager go astray. You're bound to get bankrupt. Because you're not putting your company under control. You don't have a good manager. Okay, next. The sixth consciousness, the Mano Vijnana. It is active in all the three realms of existence, Kamadhatu, Rupadhatu, and Arupadhatu. Where are we now? In which realm of the universe are we living in? Kamadhatu. And there's a higher realm of existence above us in many ways. They enjoy much more happiness than us. Some people refer to them as heavens. They say heavens. Arupadhatu is even a higher heavens. There are four heavens in here. If we call them quote and unquote heavens, there are 4 in there, and there are 18 in here. Rupadhatu heavens. There are 18 in here and 4 in there. And these people living in heavens, they enjoy happiness. They have no suffering, physically and emotionally, except they still carry accumulated latent karma. So heavens are not the ultimate way of enlightenment. Even if you're in heaven, you're enjoying happiness, you still have that latent karma in you that hasn't been purified. Only when that latent karma is purified, then you go to nirvana, which is a much higher level than heaven. Heaven is still a location, Heaven is still a form. Heaven is still, maybe still matters. Heaven is still atoms, protons, electrons. You still see heavens. Anything you still can see is not nirvana. Anything you can see, you can feel, you can touch, you can listen to, they're subject to disintegration. You have to go beyond matter. And that's nirvana. We have no way to describe it. We don't know how to describe it in words. The Buddha said, okay, nirvana. What is nirvana? No more action. No more thought. No more speech. And what is that? We don't know how to call it. We can only sense it. The Buddha called it nirvana. It's beyond heaven. Oh, by the way, realms of existence, let me just show you what realms of existence are. Kamadhatu, the lower realm, Rupadhatu, Arupadhatu. Kamadhatu, Yu Jie, Rupadhatu, Sejie, Arupadhatu, Wu Sejie, Yokai, Sikkai, Mo Sikkai. We're living in the lower, the 6 paths of reincarnations. We are in here, humans, in the middle. We are just better than the animals. We're just better than the animals, the ghost realms, and the hell realms. We're not even better than Asuras and Devas. Devas, they're just much higher level than us. Asuras are higher level than us. Humans, we're in the middle. And what is the most distinct characteristics of all the sentient beings living in here? What are the distinct characteristics that we are, the world we're living in now? We have form and we have desires. What are form? Atoms, protons, electrons, matter. All these are matters. The most minute, we used to say atoms is the most minute, now is no more. Protons, electrons, neutrons, I don't know in the future, more scientists will find out that you still can break down electron, break down proton. I'm not a scientist, you should tell me what's going on. I don't know. They used to say atom is the finest. Now no more. And I know in the future, but it still matter. No matter how you disintegrate it, it still matter. You still form. When it's matter, you still can see it with eyes. You can still listen with your senses. When it's still matter. But mind you, human beings' senses are so limited. There are matters that we cannot listen to. There are matters that we cannot see. There are matters that we cannot feel. We can only feel crude matters. So matters and desires. We have desires. Sexual desires, desires for wealth, for pleasures of the senses, for reputations, or, so to speak, desire for money, big houses, good cars, a handsome and rich boyfriend, husband, a beautiful, girlfriend and wife, billions of dollars. They're always looking for desire to look for materialistic satisfaction. That's how the characteristics of what we're living in. However, these are only the good sides. You are looking for them, but can you have them? You can't. You want to be a billionaire, but you cannot be. And because of you have this craving, insatiable cravings, because of this craving that induces you to suffer because of attachment. You have rebirth, you have aging, you have sickness, you have death, departure from loved ones, living with hated ones, suffering arising from the 5 skandhas. We all have explained all those. Well, we're in this world. Rupadhatu, a higher level. Right now, it's just a review, so I'm not going to go deep into it. We already have explained explained them in detail. Okay, So even though it can be free to carry out a variety of assessments, our mano, our manager, can carry out a variety of assessments. What kind of assessment we're talking about? What are these assessments? These assessments are what? Mental and ego proliferation. Because the manager, our manager, the mental manager, is working with the seventh consciousness, the ego consciousness, to perform. So this assessment is nothing but egoistic, personalized, subjective assessments. We always say we all have an internal commentator. That's the reason why we are saying that. That is assessment, comments from your internal commentator on everything. You have personal comment on everything, and every comment from every person is different. It is strongly subject to the influences of the seventh and eighth consciousnesses, which, if I use a company's example, your manager is being influenced by what? By what? By your board of directors, because you are hired by your board of directors. And the board of directors are extremely egoistic. They only care about profit. They only care about the price of the stock. They are very individualistic. And this means that not only does the mono-cognized object as they exist in themselves, but also it is disposed to subjectively personalize everything that is being perceived. Everything you perceive is personalized. That's the reason why you're involved in a lot of argument with a lot of people. That's the reason why some people will say you have bigotry, you're personalizing everything. But who isn't? The one who is saying that you're personalizing things, he himself, she herself is personalizing at the same time. We all build up these habits. Next. Why does the sixth consciousness cognize subjectively? Mano, our manager, which is a good name, that's the nickname for our manager, Mano, is always in contact with the eighth allied consciousness, and the latter is the store of all Dharma seeds that are not pure. These seeds are the causes and conditions of our samsara, our life and death. And also Mano is always being influenced by the seven manas consciousness. You see the difference between Mano and manas? You see that sometimes I created this myself, my understanding. Mano and manas, there's an S in manas, right? You know why there's an S in manas? A plural form? Because when you die, the mano dies. But the seven is not dying. The seven just high into the store consciousness, so you're always involved with a plural form because they always carry from one life to the next. This will show an S in there. How many S are there? Millions of S. You have millions of ego directors since many lifetimes being hidden in the board of directors. That's the reason why it's not called Mano, it's called Manas. The seventh mana consciousness, and the latter is our deeply held attachment to ego, which is the cause of suffering. The seventh consciousness is the cause of suffering. So it is easy to remember names. Mano is the manager. Manas are the directors. The board is being the ego. Next. And what are we doing? This is the last slides before we go for lunch. And after this, I finish with the sixth consciousness. I'm going to talk about the seven consciousness in the next session. I finish with the sixth. And why are we studying consciousness? We are trying to transform our polluted consciousness towards enlightenment. But first of all, we've got to have a conceptual understanding of it. By applying the Yogacara philosophy for everyday activities, volitional activities, we begin to understand how our consciousness and the mental proliferation function, and then we can replace subjective concepts with objective thinking. Then the second question is, what do you mean by objective? Isn't all objective already a subjective? How do we guide our subjectivity into being objective. It has to be guided by certain principles. So guided by precepts, jie, samatha, ding, vipassana, hui. We have to be guided by what is wrong, what is right. We have to be guided with concentration. We have to be guided with wisdom. Then we will reduce the burden of our retribution, stop creating unwholesome karma, nurture wholesome karma, and gradually reduce our attachment to self and craving. That's our conceptual understanding. We must build up, first of all, a conceptual understanding first. If you don't understand even how your mind works, say if you want to understand your own company, you have to understand, you have to know your salesman and your sales lady, the front end. Then you have to understand your manager. Then you have to understand your directors. Other than understanding your front end, all the workers, or the production workers, the factories, the storehouse and everything, all the factories, you have to understand the manager. And after understanding the manager, you have to understand the board of directors. Then you still have to understand what? The whole conglomerated company, its archive files, its past history, its budgeting, its experiences. What is all that conglomerated whole? That is the alaya consciousness, that conglomerated whole. So you have to transform your consciousness into wisdom. The sixth consciousness will gradually transform into the wisdom of wonderful contemplation. In the Chinese language is 轉第六識為妙觀察智, eliminating the ego attachment and the Dharma attachment. And I quote from a saying from a sutra. With this wisdom, the Buddha knows all dharmas without distortion or obstruction, and in that way, knowing the mental and physical condition of all beings, teach sentient beings most effectively. So it's very important that you have to change, transform your polluted manager into a wise manager. That's the first step in your company. Your first step in your company is not just to reassess your salesman, your sales lady. They are just the front end. If people say, how come I have already failed in 3 of my business? I set up 3 companies and I failed in all of them. Come and study this. You won't fail. Because you don't know your company. How come I'm unhappy? How come I always have anxiety? Because you don't know yourself. Your first and most important is to understand yourself with regard to what? To wisdom. Not understanding yourself with regard to pleasures. I will be more happy if I have all the money. Is that a truthful understanding? I'll be happy if I have a beautiful wife. Look, this guy is a beautiful wife and I have an ugly wife. We used to have a Chinese saying, flowers on the road are better than flowers at home. All these other wives are always better than your own wife because you get so used to them. The same applies to your husband.